Welcome back to another episode of Road to Riches. On this episode, we are tackling the age old conundrum of higher education and its potential payoffs in the job market, and whether or not higher education is worth it in today's world of computerization, digitization, and AI. Next, we're talking about President Trump's proposed budget for 2027, what programs he wants to cut, and what the possible ramifications could be if it is approved. I am Matthew White, joined by my co host Nyamki Buchanan, and this is Road to Riches. Good evening, everyone. Getting right back into it, uh, we are talking today first about a study done by Inside Higher Ed. It, title Graduate School Pays Off for Pharmacists but Not Psychologists. So this is an article that came out from the Journal of Inside Higher Ed, and it essentially went through the return on investment, or ROI, for different levels of graduate degrees, different types of graduate degrees, and even touched up on even higher than that as well. So your PhDs and whatnot. And so essentially, what this article went over was and what it tried to answer is it worth it to go to achieve higher education? Is it worth it to go to college? And if so, what degrees pay off and what don't? Where is the ROI coming from? And according to the article, pharmacists, which is the Pharm.D moniker, these are the people who receive the highest ROI, and it discussed a comprehensive study. The study itself was conducted by economists Joseph Atlongy and Ling Zhang, and the study was specifically titled "Returns to Specific Graduate Degrees: Estimates Using Texas Administrative Records." And so, going through the article, we see Pharm.D graduates see a 114% average earnings boost compared to those with only an undergraduate degree in the same field. Looking at net ROI, after accounting for the high cost of tuition and the opportunity cost of years spent out in the workforce, pharmacy graduates still see a 68% net increase in lifetime earnings. Next, looking at rankings, out of 18 popular graduate fields, pharmacy ranked second, outperforming law, which is your Juris Doctorate, your JD, and business, MBA, Master's in Business Administration degrees. And so then it asks, all right, so now we have the degrees that pay off. What about the degrees that don't? So what they found was, it doesn't it refers to several fields where graduate schools often fail to provide a financial break-even point. So what it means by that is, can you at least earn your way out of student debt? How much it cost you to go to school in the first place, and is it even worth it in terms of things like net present value? And in this case, the economists found psychology and counseling were highlighted for having low or even negative net ROI when debt and lost wages are factored in. Again, another word for this net ROI is net present value. So it's taking the present value, the present value of projected future earnings because you have the degree, and then of course subtracting from that present value how much it costs in the immediate term to go to school. And another couple degrees is fine arts and social work, While socially valuable, these degrees often lead to salaries that do not scale significantly enough to justify the cost of the degree. Uh, and couldn't have said it better myself. And so, this sparks a debate that the United States and really the majority of the Western world who has access to this type of economized higher education, this talk, this touches up on the debate of higher education that we've been having for quite some time, and something that you have advocates of both sides. You have people like Michael Knowles on one side, and other economists on one side, saying that higher education is still a good thing and you can still expand your horizons, and it's still possible to come out better than better educated, and be better suited for the workforce than people who did not go, which of course is the whole point. And then there's people on the other side. Um, there's people on the other side of this argument who says that actually, as technology gets better and better, it's less and less advantageous to go to higher education. You can just teach yourself if you really wanted to. That's assuming that you don't want to go into blue collar work, for example. That doesn't necessarily require the higher education mantra, or the higher education technical knowledge. You can simply learn as an apprentice, or something like that. But even if you wanted to go into white collar work, especially with the introduction of AI, there is very, very little reason to go into higher education, go into that debt when you may or may not be able to pay it off, uh, or you may or may not be better than you would. You may or may not be better than you would be had you not gone at all. And so, we have these two sides. I of course can see both sides, but um, I am starting to side a little bit more with, well, at least asking questions about the viability of higher education. Okay, so because of the introduction of AI, but even before AI, I would have still had this point, and I still did have that point, have this point. Uh, I can just do my own research. I can just do this work on my own. It's not like these professors are gatekeeping this knowledge. This knowledge is out there. And with the internet, the way it is evolved, especially with AI, now I can just sit down in front of Gemini or Claude and essentially ask it, I need a crash course in financial investments. I need a crash course in building a discounted cash flow model, or learning how to be learning how to be a pharmacist, the different drugs, how they affect the body, anatomy. And so horizons have been extended and widened, and it. My opinion on the whole thing is that college has gotten wildly more expensive in the last 30 to 40 years. And in that time of it getting more expensive, it's become less and less useful, in my opinion, as higher education used to be incredibly useful. But that was back when, the internet was not nearly as prevalent, even when the internet didn't even exist. That's when higher education was very useful. Uh, However, as college has gotten more and more expensive, it has done so in the same time that it's gotten less and less useful. And so I think, and a lot of that has to do with this narrative from our government and our parents and society at large, saying that this is a necessity. You have to go to college if you want to go be successful in life. And in certain parts of that statement are made in good faith. I will say personally, for me, I was able to widen my own horizons while I was at OU getting my undergrad, and even while I'm getting my MBA. But it's not necessarily because of the material that is being taught to me. It's because I'm using the vast resources of the University of Oklahoma to learn on my own. And it's the environment itself induces one to learn if they want to learn. But that's not really an argument for the viability of higher education. That's just saying, oh, so you like libraries. um, and so, what are your thoughts here, Nyanki? And, you know, what what is the future of higher education in the United States, but also in the Western world at large?
Yeah, so I mean, you did hit on a lot of good things, a lot of points that we do need to talk about at length. The first thing I do want to hit on those is really your last point there. When you were talking about, um, basically getting the most you can out of your education is not necessarily just going to class, right? Um, whether or not you want to spend additional time at the library going through their resources, whether you take part in the various competitions that may be offered or join the clubs or other things like that on campus, at the end of the day, I've heard it said before, and I truly do believe this largely, is that generally the value of an education or going to college, that is not what you learn, because like you said, you can go on the internet now and learn pretty much anything you want for free, or a small fee, not the multiple thousands of dollars that it takes to go to college. So um, the value is the network that you build. It is the experience that you get doing the projects, participating in clubs, being a part of the events, the alumni network, all these other things, spending time with your professors and getting to pick their brains on individual things or specific topics that are a little bit more difficult to do research on just through Google or AI or in books in the library, what have you. So that is ultimately the big thing, and that's at all levels. It's at, even to some degree, even the last 1 or 2 years of high school. Definitely, it is in your undergraduate career. Even in, if you're going for a master's or a doctorate degree, it's infinitely more important there to take advantage of the network. And just because you've graduated and maybe a few years removed from the physical location and connection of college, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're completely out on your own. Again, the alumni network still exists. You can go on LinkedIn and find a company that you want to get a job at, and see, it'll say such and such and 136 other alumni from your school work at this company, right? That's a
Right.
very easy way to start networking for that job, to be able to say early on, if I want a job at, we'll say Bank of America, right? If I want a job at Bank of America, I don't, but if I did, then and I didn't know anyone directly there, all I have to do is, like I said, go on LinkedIn, see that one thing, find someone that has a similar path or is in a similar role that I want to be in, send them a little message, say, hey, this is who I am. I looked at your profile. We went to the same college, and I want to see how you got where you are. Invite them out for a coffee chat. Sit down with them for lunch. It may take $15 of buying them a drink at Starbucks or whatever, or even a little bit more. Maybe $50 if you go out to an actual meal at lunch, just to get an hour, 30 minutes to an hour of this person's time and start to develop that relationship, which will hopefully turn into either you getting a referral or them referring you to their HR department, or even maybe just basically a direct hire. So there are ways to get more out of your education than most people know. That said, I am a firm believer that when you go to school on top of the network that you're paying for, the only other thing you're really paying for, it generally, is the piece of paper, the certification to be able to give to an employer or give to another institution or give to someone else and say, according to this degree, I'm supposed to know this amount of information or this type of information. So a lot of employers obviously will use that as shorthand. They're going to say, well, instead of coming up with a test to make sure that you can do this job, I'm just going to require you to have a degree in this field, maybe even specialize, have 6 or 9 or 12 hours in a certain topic. So that way I know you can do this job. So that is something that's definitely important. And even at the higher levels, when you do get into the things that we generally see as more prestigious career paths or higher paying career paths, I'm talking things such as lawyer, surgeon, pharmacist, as the article talks about, things like this where you do need significant additional training in a specialized field. Of course, definitely go to school for those things, because no matter what anyone tells you, a surgeon is not going to get good at surgery by watching YouTube videos. It doesn't matter how many books you study, how many articles you read, how many podcasts you look at. It doesn't matter if you spend 100 hours watching people do the exact surgery that you're training for. Until you get your hands down and dirty, you're not going to figure it out. It's the same thing with training for a sport, right? I can learn all the theory behind how to properly hit a baseball, but it doesn't mean that I'm actually going to be good at it until I start swinging a bat. So with that in mind, there are certain things that, especially if you want to go out on your own, you don't really need to sit in college forever for. And especially on those things, some a lot, or some of the white collar positions, some of the lower level, even blue collar positions, things like that. It is often easier to get into these fields by doing the networking and getting experience, actually doing the work to some degree, rather than going to school and then saying, "Hey, I've graduated, get me a job." Right? We've talked on this show previously about the diminishing opportunity for white collar jobs, and about how much of a struggle it is that people are paying recruiters now to have a better shot at getting some of these jobs. If I want to go into investment banking, for example, then of course people are going to want to see a degree, and generally they're going to want to see more than just the degree to go along with it. That's because it's just a highly competitive field that literally thousands of people are applying for jobs for literally a few hundred positions every year. That's not something you can get around. But if I want to be at a local or community bank, there are probably dozens of them within a 20 or 25-mile radius that you can apply to at some level. And so, if even if you don't go to college, if you eventually say, well, I want to be in commercial banking, for a lot of people, it's simply easier to start as a teller or a personal banker and work your way up. If you start at the lowest level as a teller, you put in a year, 18 months there, you get promoted to a personal banker. You put in another year, 18 months there, you go to your manager, say, I want to get licensed, because those certifications and licenses are another great investment to show that you do know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about, even if you don't have a 4-year degree, or graduate school an additional 2 to 4 years, or even a doctorate, which in some cases will take an additional 6 or even 8 years for an MD, things like that. So basically what I'm saying is, find someone who has done or is doing what you want to do. Ask them what it took to get where they are, and then sit down and take that information and find, what is the best way for me to achieve this goal. It may be to go to college and get a degree in this area. If it is a graduate degree specific thing, then go do that. Of course, it's going to cost you a lot of money, whether you pay out of pocket or do student loans, but there are ways to decrease your cost of college, which is something else that I want to get into right after this. Um, but whether it's a degree or a traditional school plan, whether it's getting certain certifications, whether it's just jumping in at a low field and working your way up, whether it's finding an apprenticeship, whatever it is, find the quickest and most effective way to achieve your goal and then pursue that. Now, again, I did say just a little while ago, I wanted to talk about how to lower your costs or ensure you're getting the best bang for your buck in with your degree or with college, basically. And so, of course, everyone is going to tell you, at least initially, they're going to say, go to the most prestigious school that you can get into and can afford. On the surface, this is great advice because, again, if you go to my earlier mindset of, well, I'm paying for the network and I'm paying for um, for those connections that I'll build and those opportunities, then yes, I'm going to have a much stronger, wider, and more successful network going to Harvard if I wanted to get into business, going to well, maybe not Harvard specifically for business, unless you were going to their
Brown.
business school, HBS. Brown sucks. We don't talk about Brown. Going to UPenn, right? And then eventually Wharton for my master's if I wanted uh, to go into business. Going
Right.
to MIT if I wanted to get into engineering or technology, or Stanford for engineering and technology, things like that, right? There are definitely certain benefits to certain areas or certain schools that you would go to. And in those cases, those Ivy League or otherwise top schools may be a good investment for someone that can afford to do those things. Uh, but most of us can't. Let's just be honest. Even if we do get into the school, most of us can't afford to go. And it's not just tuition and fees. It's not just housing. It's also the actual cost of living in the area as well. Can I pay uh, to drive my car or park my car there if I have one, or to take the bus? Is that something I'm willing to do? Do I want to be in an area with this certain climate if I'm going, up to New England, or if I went to Northwestern in Chicago, for example, things like that. There's a lot that you have to think about when you're making that decision. Um, but of course, number one, what you need to look at is, once you have decided on a few places to get your education, and you know how much it's going to cost to do each one. You need to, of course, first look at internal scholarships. What type of financial aid in terms of scholarships and grants and fellowships is another one, work study programs, etc. Will the school offer me? How can I lower my costs directly through them? Secondly, what are outside scholarships and opportunities that I'll have? Thirdly, will I have the ability to work on my own? Take on a part-time job. And then, fourthly, which is really going to apply more so at the graduate level, um, what type of reimbursement program does my job offer? That's something that I'm going through right now. My bank, as I'm getting my MBA, and speaking of, uh, education itself is another important topic for me. I guess it's very close to my heart. Number one, because like I said, I'm getting my MBA, but also because my brother is a teacher. So I feel that I feel very strongly about certain topics within this field. And back to the point, my bank is paying or reimbursing some of the fees that I'm paying to my college, some of the tuition, which is going to lower the cost of my attendance, right? Um, for those of you who have a military connection, whether you served yourself, or whether it was a parent or something like that, you may qualify for the GI Bill or some other federal tuition assistance through that. Take advantage of these opportunities to lower your costs and pay for these things, and it's going to make your ROI better because you have spent less money out of pocket. It's going to shorten the time it takes for you to break even, to make that money back. We often say that doctors and lawyers make a lot of money. They get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's why people want to go and do these things and have these careers. What they don't tell you though is that particularly these two fields, these two paths, most of the people that go these routes take on literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in total loan debt. I
Exactly.
remember seeing one person who basically blitzed through their medical program. You know, just didn't take any breaks, didn't do any additional work, anything like that. Because of course, medicine is a very hard program. It's very time intensive. So when they graduated, they had close to $1 million in student loan debt. I've seen lawyers and other people's, you know, they say, oh, well, after doing my 4 years in law school, I have 500, 600, $700,000 worth of student loan debt. And of course, the interest payments are horrible at that amount.
Right.
For someone who has had their loans deferred for so long and that interest has accrued so much, because that's what they don't tell you. You know, unless you get a subsidized loan, if you get an unsubsidized loan, then you are accruing interest on these student loans, even though your payments are deferred until I believe 2 years after you graduate. So this is all racking up for the years in which you're in school. You're, even though you've only taken out directly maybe $500,000 in loans, when it gets time for them to turn on your payments, you might be looking at $650,000 in loans that you have to pay back at that point. And again, depending on your interest rate and how much you're paying, there are some people who have literally been paying into their loans for years and have not decreased the balance at all, or at least not significantly. So think about these things, because that's often one of the issues with these high paying fields that take a long time to get the proper certifications and education. You rack up so much debt that you essentially have to have a high salary in order to offset this. A lot of people don't know, but most doctors don't actually hit a similar or equivalent, I should say, level of wealth or net worth as most other people until their late 40s or early 50s. So while someone who, let's say, went to trade school, right? Someone who's a plumber, they spent 1 to 2 years in trade school, if that, or they went directly to an apprenticeship, depending on your state. Every state's different, of course. Figure out what you have to do in your area to get the certifications or the opportunities that you want, the licenses, or what have you, and in order to start practicing in your field. But you know, that plumber, they may hit their first $1 million in net worth, we'll say at 35. Just an estimation. I don't know any of this for sure, but we'll just say 35, right? Whereas that doctor is not going to start practicing until 32, 33, somewhere around there.
Right.
And then there's another 10 plus years that it's going to take for him to, firstly, of course, pay off those student loans, and then to rack up the additional money to get to that $1 million, right? Even though he's making 4 or 5 times as much money as the plumber, because he's put it off so much, he's got additional stress, long hours, lots of debt, and these things are gonna push his time horizon out further and further and further. So that's why ultimately I don't I generally don't recommend most people get graduate degrees unless you're trying to do a career change, in which case an MBA or some other graduate program is going to be a good opportunity for you. Um, or you're trying to advance your career in a way that is not directly related to the experience gained in your career path, then that will be good. Or like I said earlier, if you're having a career in which you require certain certifications and licenses, in those cases, then I would say graduate degrees may be something for you to look at. Everyone else, it's not really necessary. Um, you know, there also is, you know, one additional case in which I'd say, sure, go ahead and get a graduate degree. And it's simply because if you want to and can afford it, right?
Right.
Because everyone has their own goals and dreams, and I want I like education. I want to get multiple degrees and pursue the certifications and essentially have every opportunity available to me that I want to take. And that's why I'm getting a graduate degree, even though it's not going to directly help me on my career path at this moment in time. If you are one of those people who are like me and you can afford to do so, be my guest, get a degree. But something that I have seen, especially in the black community, is the idea of being overqualified or having to pursue overqualifications. Because some people will say, well, when I got my 4-year degree, I wasn't able to get any jobs in the area that I wanted or pursue the career I wanted. And I don't want to go to something else. So what am I going to do? Well, the obvious solution for those people is just to continue your education, to stay in college, and with the hopes that eventually you will be able to come out and get on the career path that you want. What they don't tell you about this for most of those people is that at that point you are overqualified, you are over credentialed, and if you are applying for an entry level position with a graduate degree, you are generally going to be overlooked for multiple reasons. Number one, they're going to assume that you're going to ask for a salary that is outside their budget, which makes sense. If I can pay, let's say, $60,000 to someone with a bachelor's degree, then I know that the person who likely has additional money wrapped up in student loans and other things and is going to want a quicker return on their investment, they're going to want, let's say, $70,000. Why would I pay $70,000 for the same job and work that I can pay someone $60,000 to do? That's the first thing. The second thing is that you generally come with a certain level of confidence or bravado when you have additional certifications. People want to say, oh, I have this, I am that, I've done XYZ, and demand additional respect for it. And that can throw off the company culture, especially if you're surrounded by by less credentialed individuals. On the other hand, of course, there is um, the push in favor of hiring over credentialed people, which is, well, if I can pay someone who's significantly more educated the same amount as I can pay the less educated person, well, then I'm going to go with the more educated person. Of course, um, that seems like a good thing in the short term, and it is in the short term a good thing. But these HR departments and these managers are also thinking long term, and they know that as soon as the overqualified or higher credentialed person gets enough experience to leave and go to a different company or pursue a different role and get a higher salary doing something more aligned with what they want, they're going to take that opportunity, which means they've now spent 2 to 3 or 4 years training and investing into this person that's no longer here. When they could have chosen the less credentialed person, put in the same time and money, gotten them to the same level of education and skill that they wanted for this position, and this person is more likely to either stick with that specific position or to stay with the company and progress in the company um, in the future. So the the company that you're working for, the employer, is getting a better long-term benefit hiring a less educated person.
Right.
Therefore, the moral or the lesson I should say of everything that I've just said ultimately is figure out what path you want to go on, figure out the best way to pay for it, and then get experience in your field and figure out whether or not you need to continue spending money on your education uh, before you do so. You don't want to be that over credentialed person that people are reluctant to hire, but you still want to make sure that you have enough skill and experience and education to be able to do the things that you want to do.
Right. And you touched on a lot of good points I kind of want to go over. Number one, the completion of the an idea that you had, which is environments of learning inspire future learning, right? So, and what I mean by that is if I had not gone to go get my undergrad, if I was not in school right now getting my master's, uh, then I wouldn't, I can say for me personally that I am confident I would not know the things that I know now. I would not be as educated as I am today. So, people like to throw around this idea, that they're going to be self-motivated. They're going to, uh, I don't need college because I'm self-motivated and I'm gonna go learn all on my own, and I don't need to spend all this money. um uh, but what people need to stop thinking is that they're Bill Gates. You're not self-motivated. And this isn't saying that you have to go to college to be self-motivated, but this is saying that as stop using that as something to attack college for. This idea that it's simply inadequate nowadays for learning because you can simply go on the internet and learn things. Because I know a lot of people who say this. I know a lot of people who are like, well, I don't need college because I can just learn on my own. And these people are often not very far in life. And I say that in the kindest way possible, but they they in no disrespect to anybody who didn't go, college is not for everyone. Let me put that out there. I am completely in the boat of college is not for everyone. For certain people, maybe it works that you don't go to college. Maybe it just doesn't make sense for you. Um, but to sit there and say, and in my opinion, lie to yourself and say, oh, I don't need college because I can just learn this stuff on my own, things that college teaches, uh is you're just being disingenuous. You're attributing uh you know false credit to yourself and your own self discipline. Maybe some people do have the self discipline to sit and learn on their own, but I'm telling you right now, the majority of people, the vast majority of people, I will argue, don't. And all that to say that the environment of higher education, undergrad and even graduate, you will be inspired. And your inspiration comes from the fact that you're going to get a bad grade in this class that you're paying for. You will be inspired to not only learn the material but maybe go out and learn some more. Your inspiration for learning more is maybe you don't have to work so hard studying for the next test, right? And these are real psychological effects that the collegiate experience has on someone. This isn't necessarily an endorsement or an indictment against higher education. This is just a psychological effect that I've noticed in a lot of my friends that I went to college with and within myself, is that it inspires you to learn more because you're in an environment uh, built primarily for that reason. One of the main points of the article is that I really agree with, is go to school for the love of learning. Don't go to school if you don't love to learn, if you don't want to better yourself. And I think at the end of the day, um, maybe we're looking at higher education a little bit unfairly. Uh, Maybe higher education even especially nowadays, should be looked at as an opportunity to better yourself, not only to better yourself through learning, but to better yourself through self-discipline by studying, to better yourself by punctuality, by actually showing up, all of which are incredibly important in day-to-day life. And I don't think that I don't think that needlessly attacking higher education because technology has made it obsolete or whatever um, people want to say is fair, and I don't think it helps anyone. Another point that I wanted to say is that um, you do have to be careful as to what you go and get as far as your degree or certification in higher education. For example, you could go get your bachelor's in finance, right? Something that something that I'll put it this way: before there was government aid for college, for colleges and higher education in the first place, before the federal government ever got involved, you had students going to their local banks, and then after that, it was state governments, and they had to go ask for a loan. They had to go and say, okay, I'm getting my degree in X. I'm expected to graduate, in let's say 2028, spring of 28. And, this is going to be my degree. And then, we'll see what happens after that. But I'm confident that I can pay off this degree, pay off this loan because I'm getting a degree and something that is actually useful. Again, we're honest on this show, so let's be honest here. Bachelor in finance, sure, useful. You can go in and make some real money with that. And the bank would receive this information and say, okay, and they would stamp approve on it because they are confident that again based on many things, one of which is appearance and general attitude. If you look like you want to be serious about this, or you look like you just want to go to have the quote unquote college experience, the bank will say approve or disapprove, and if they approve, then you go. um, because college was a lot less prevalent at that time when this was happening. College was a lot less expensive. Uh, Additionally, the government wasn't involved in aiding with student expenses, but that's not the point right now. The point is that's what would happen if, and then on the other side, on the other hand, if you went to a bank and said, I want to get a degree in psychology, right? Or especially now, I want to go get a degree in African studies or gender studies or whatever. And you could be the most studious person in the world. You could probably be the second coming of Bill Gates and say you want to get a degree in gender studies, and you're a college student and you're not employed or anything, you have no future prospects. The bank will look at you and say you will be less qualified for the workforce when you get out. There is no possible way that we would ever lend you money to go after this degree. And so that the whole point there is there are degrees that are worth going and getting, and there are degrees that are not. I think that we look at college, and unfortunately we blame, and this is true of a lot of things. So it's interesting that this philosophy has bled into higher education as well. We blame the entire collegiate system and higher education system for like degrees in economics, like degrees in finance, like engineering degrees, architecture, things of that nature. We blame those degrees as they are encompassed by the entire collegiate system because of the failures because of the failures of these other pointless degrees. We because you see because economics majors, by the way, are notoriously known. 11% of millionaires in the United States, and that's a conservative estimate, are economics majors. And finance majors, sorry, Niamki, they're a little bit down the list, but they're up there. Um, and but all jokes aside, the point there is they are useful. These people who go get these degrees, they're there because they want to learn. They're there because, for the most part, there are exceptions, but exceptions prove rules. For the most part, they're there to learn, and they want to better themselves, and they actually want to make money, or make the world a better place, or what have you. They're there because they're serious, and they do not deserve to be blamed for the failures of the collegiate system for offering ludicrous and asinine degrees like gender studies and African studies and diversity studies and things that I've seen at OU. I don't know what you've seen, Nyamki, but these are actual degrees that actually exist at the University of Oklahoma. I don't think that's fair to do that. I also think that last point before I get off of this, I also think that we look at the world of AI, and now we look at our digital world now, and AI and its effects, and we say, oh well, the college is even less. College is even less necessary now, or less wanted by employers because, excuse me, we have AI. AI can just either do it or teach somebody else very quickly how to do it. And I think that's only partially true. If AI raises if AI raises the bar, the standards for everyone else, don't you think that AI would raise the standards for education as well? So, for example, there is more information there is so much information that neither I nor Niamki know about, even in our own fields of economics and finance. There are so many things we don't know that we were taught in the past and we forgot, or we were legitimately not taught them because they're so high level. Don't you think that now with the introduction of AI, it can help either students who are currently learning these things better grasp these concepts because of the additional resource of assisted learning that AI can provide? Or don't you think that it can aid professors in teaching more things to students because of how quickly they're able to grasp concepts? Or even more, don't you think that we can, by this same logic, increase the bar, heighten the bar of societal intellect with a collegiate degree, again, in degrees that are viable, because we have this tool that was able to help us learn all of the things that we need to know and help us learn it faster and more efficiently, and learn more of it. And I think those are real questions. I think that look, again, college is not for everyone, but go to college because you want to go learn, and go to college because you want to expand your horizons. Go to college because in my opinion, you want to be serious about whatever field that you choose, and go because, like you were saying, Yonki, because it is a prideful thing. Go to college to make your parents proud, or go to college because you just want to have that credential there to show that you did go and put in the extra work. Again, maybe you come up for a promotion against somebody who maybe doesn't have those credentials like you do. But you both work equally as hard and you're both up for the same promotion. Maybe they make a new position for, maybe they give you the promotion and make a new position for the other person, or just give it to you. Why? Because you went out of your way to go expand your horizons. You went out of your way to go learn, and you sacrificed years of your life to go master this craft. Now, let me be clear, you better have made use of that time in higher education. And if you did, I promise you, because I'm living it right now, I promise you it will pay off for you. Um, Again, much respect for people who didn't go to college because it just wasn't going to be useful for them. That's fair. But I have seen a lot of people who use the excuse that college isn't for them as a cop out to say, to say, yeah, after high school, I'm done. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go get a job somewhere. I'm not gonna take who these people who unfortunately don't take life seriously. They it I have friends who do this, and I'm telling you, it's not good for them. I'm looking, I visit their social media or whatever, and look at them and say, man, you had such high potential, what happened? And so, honestly, a lot of this debate is, are you going to be serious about it or not? I guess, if you're not going to be serious about higher education, then sure, you shouldn't go to college. But if you are, then there is a serious argument as to why you should go and why it would be very good for you.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. Um, Something that I think needs to be reiterated is you said two or three times, make sure you're going for something that actually makes sense to go for. Um, like you said, there are a lot of degrees that shouldn't exist. I'll just put it that way. There are a lot of degrees that shouldn't exist that people are going for. And ultimately it's holding people back, especially because we we people complain about how much the government is spending, about how much they're putting into the schools and the Department of Education, things like that. Well, part of the problem is that we are giving student loans to people that, number one, don't finish their degrees, which is a problem, because the government, quote unquote, doesn't see any return on that investment. Number two, we're giving student loans to people that are getting degrees with horrible career opportunities. If you're going to go to school for something, make sure that you can actually get a degree in something that makes sense, that you can actually get a job in that field. If we see the joke or the meme on all the time, or I guess maybe less so now. But the whole thing about people going to college and getting a degree in gender studies, uh, just to go and be a barista at Starbucks. Well, that's kind of the case. I mean, I don't necessarily want to shame anyone for what they want to study. I mean, I think generally education is a good thing no matter what you're learning. We need people who are experts in all fields if we want to advance humanity, right? But at the same time, we can't expect someone to get a degree in a field that has no job opportunities and then be mad at them when they can't pay back their student loans. It just doesn't make sense. From a business standpoint, or a corporation standpoint, you know, you and me both have experience in underwriting, and I have experiences in lending, right? So if a business came to me and they said, "Hey, I want to get a term loan," and I say, "Okay, what are you gonna use it for?" They're gonna say, "Oh, we're gonna educate our staff so that way we can increase our productivity." Okay, great. My next question is, well, what are the programs that you're going to pay or to buy to offer your employees, and what's the likelihood that they'll all finish it, And then how much do you expect your efficiencies to improve, your output to improve, etc. And based on that potential return on investment, we're then going to go through our process and decide whether or not to lend you this money. If you come to me and say, well, I wanna teach, or I want to buy a program that teaches all of my employees how to screw in light bulbs 2 times faster. Well, unless your job or these people's jobs is to go to a bunch of different places and screw in light bulbs, I'm going to look at you like you're crazy. Why is someone why is a mining company, for example, coming to me and saying, I want to pay $1 million to teach all of my employees how to screw in light bulbs faster? That doesn't make sense. But that's exactly what our government is doing to with these people that are getting degrees that have little to no actual career opportunity. And that's causing, as we said earlier, additional spend, additional tax burdens on people. It's putting people in poor financial decisions with debt that they are struggling to pay back, or oftentimes can't pay back. And even with that, you can't even declare bankruptcy and get out of it, because student loans follow you through bankruptcy. So there is quite literally no way to get out of paying your student loans except death.
Right.
Just so we know. But again, I mean, and we're literally at 56 minutes now, so obviously we don't have a whole lot of time for anything else. But this is the topic of education is something that we'll be able to talk about literally for hours. I mean, people have been talking about various different aspects of it for days. And the conversation that I had with my brother earlier this week, who, as I said earlier in the episode, is a teacher. So he has experience in curriculum, classroom management, doing all these things, the certification processes that they go through, working with the school boards and state agencies, things like that. And just some of the issues that he was telling me about, there are so many inefficiencies, redundancies, and idiotic policies in our K through 12 education system, no matter where you are in the country, that if we can get these things addressed, our youth are going to be better educated and prepared for the future. Our colleges are going to be accepting more qualified individuals, and our businesses, whether they're looking for candidates with or without a degree, are overall going to have more quality educated applicants for their positions. Something that a lot of people don't know, and I thought that you, Matt, were going to talk about it a little bit earlier, but you ended up not. Maybe you don't know this either, but most people don't know is that back before, as you said, the government started getting involved with higher education. Not only did people have to go to private institutions to get loans to pay for colleges if they needed to, but up until that point, and especially before, colleges largely didn't offer many degrees in the first place. Colleges were typically um, catered or advertised to higher net worth individuals and their children, because these are the people that had additional time and money to spend on an education, and they could afford to be in very niche areas or get educations in things that didn't really matter anyway. Most of the colleges were offering degrees in things such as literature, ancient history, various languages, things like that. I read an article a couple of days ago that said that um, when Harvard originally got started, and soon after, one of the requirements for all of their applicants is that they had to be able to not only speak both Latin and Greek, on top of English, of course, but they had to be able to translate common large texts that were originally written in these two languages. So it goes to show that the idea of sophistication and specialization is what college was supposed to be. But we have made so much progress that the amount of information that people need to be successful in the various fields that we have cannot be adequately taught in the 12 years through high school. We need additional education. And that used to not be the case. This is why, as I said again, we have trade schools, we have apprenticeship programs, we have 4 year undergrad degrees as well as graduate degrees and postdoc and all these other things, right? So, with all of that in mind, this all just comes down to the idea that our education system as a whole needs to be reevaluated, and the stigma, the societal stigma of not going to college is one of the worst things that has happened to younger generations in the last 20 to 30 years. It's driven many people into debt, into bad educational decisions, into career paths that they don't want to be in or otherwise can't get out of. And it's blocked a lot of other people out of career paths that they want to be in,
Right.
and can't break into for whatever reason.
These kids
But
who had no business going to college in the first place end up going. Uh, and
exactly,
and
exactly.
just as a real quick point, because I know we're running low on time, but Thomas Sowell made the point when and this is a discrimination disparities point, but a point that is relevant nonetheless. Speaking about affirmative action and saying that the idea of affirmative action to get more quote unquote minorities into higher education by favoring their test scores and their entrance essays and exams over white kids or Asian kids, or what have you, is actually punishing them, because and you could see it in their scores. At, for example, they would end up getting into Harvard. They would score in the 70 uh, 70 percentile at the most, which is incredibly good for somebody going to Harvard, but not good in Harvard, in but not very good, obviously, for Harvard themselves. That is subpar if you're a student at Harvard. That's not to say that this person wasn't qualified to go to college. It just means they weren't qualified to go to college at Harvard. They can go to the University of Oklahoma. They can go to, no disrespect again to my OU alum, but they can go to the University of Kansas, University of Texas Christian University. They can go to these state universities, Oklahoma State, what have you. But you're going to force them to go to you're going to force them to go to Harvard because of this program that you say helps them. And it still connects to what you were saying, because this societal stigma is in a sense the affirmative action of getting into college debt. These people who have no business going these people have no business going to college. Not to say that there's anything wrong with them, not to say that they're not smart enough, but their career path that they want to be, they may want to be a plumber. Plumbers make fantastic money, and they shouldn't have to go to college for that. They may want to be an electrician. Electricians make a ton of money, and provide an insane amount of value for society. You don't got to go to college for that. But because of this, again, I'm gonna say it one more time: this affirmative action of societal stigma. Um, they now go feel like they have to, like it's an obligation, and it's not. Like I said before, no disrespect to these people who don't go to college because they don't need to. However, um, However, they're taking up a spot of somebody who wants to actually be there, and again, forcing the again blaming the kids who actually want to be in college, uh, as being part of the overall collegiate system, because the kids who don't want to go to college are included in there, who were told to go, who are forced to go. And in the same way, of affirmative action, by its monetary effects, in its real effects, has a similar effect, on minority kids going to Ivy League schools. They're fantastic for any other university. Take your pick in the United States, but unfortunately, not for Harvard, not for Wharton, not for Brown or Dartmouth. Um, but they would be fantastic anywhere else, just not there.
Right. And I mean, that's not to say that that they're, any less valuable than anyone else, but like, I mean, it's just simply not everyone belongs everywhere. You know,
Right.
it doesn't matter if you're white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever the case. Not everyone's going to hack it at Harvard. Not everyone is going to be able to graduate from Yale or Cornell. I mean,
Hey, we're not going.
they're exactly, we didn't, and I
Right.
think I'm living a pretty decent life. you know,
Right.
I don't
Exactly.
I don't I don't regret my choice to not go to Purdue, for example, because I got into Purdue. I don't regret my choice not to do that. I although I had some issues at OU, just like everyone does, I'm ultimately happy that I went. I think I have a good career and I learned a lot and good connections from it. Um, and so if when you're looking at schools, just pick a school that not only you can afford, of course, but keep in mind that you can go to OU and get a great degree in engineering, or as we did, go to Price and get good degrees from in business, right? You can go to Ole Miss. They have a great accounting program, for example. You can go to Ohio State University. You can go to uh, whatever college is available to you. I have a coworker who went to Iowa. I didn't know that Iowa was good for anything, but he's great at his job, and it turns out that Iowa has pretty much one of the consistently best wrestling programs in the country, and that's also something that he did. So good on him. Go somewhere where your talents are celebrated and appreciated, and you'll get what you want out of your experience. That's all we're saying. Not everyone has to go to the Ivy League or the most expensive school. Figure out what it is that you're looking to do and to learn, and find the best return on investment that you can get, and go to a school that you can pay for. That's at the end of the day, that's all we're saying. And again, you don't even have to go to school. Like I said, if you want to go to trade school, that's fine. There are plenty of careers that don't require higher education at all, not even trade school. You can start your own company. I know plenty of people that have done that and are very successful in their own right and have never gotten any higher education. People tend to not know a couple of these things, and maybe this example is not necessarily the best given who he is, and what he did. But Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of college, for example. There you don't have to have an education, a great education, so seemingly great education, I should say, in order to be very, very successful, and maybe what's more important, even just very happy with your
Right.
life. But anyway, we've gone much farther over our time, so unfortunately we don't have time to get to our second story. Maybe we can save it for next week if it's still relevant. Um, but we've gone over a summary, I guess, two or three times of this topic, so I'm not going to do it again. But overall, thank you very much for watching this episode of Road to Riches. My name is Niamki Buchanan. I was joined here by my co-host Matt White. Um, If you like the episode, please like and subscribe to the podcast. New episodes come out every Thursday. Uh, we will see you next week.